So we are continuing with Genesis chapter 48. We moved 15 meters, 20 meters from the beach, just under the trees. Although because it's dripping a little bit, it's sunny, but it's raining a lot inland, and some of that rain seemingly is coming over here. Anyhow, here's some trees, although they don't really keep the rain out, but at least a little bit. Okay, so let's continue with this chapter, verse 5. And now your two sons, who were born to you in the land of Egypt, before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. Okay, so Jacob still speaking to Joseph, informing him now is this very important thing, that his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, the two oldest of the two oldest boys, that they will be treated not as grandsons, but as sons of Jacob. In other words, they receive the same kind of, each of their tribes will receive the same kind of land, as we're going to see ultimately as it played out. Okay, but here are the roots for that, because this is what Israel is saying, like we've seen in verse 2, with Israel summoning his strength to say ultimately this. So again, Moses in reminding the people, although he was not of the tribe of Benjamin, he was a Levite, of the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh, he was a Levite, that this is why they both. Okay, maybe there were some complaints. So it was just with this, in this history telling, informing the people, so they're not going to make this same mistake. So he said, they are mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are. So Ephraim and Manasseh, Reuben the oldest, Simeon the second. Okay, so this is what is just getting at. Verse 6. And the children that you fathered after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. Okay, so the other sons ultimately, Ephraim, Manasseh, but the other sons or offspring, they will get land with these. So they're not their grandchildren. So they're not going to get their own piece of land. Okay, but Ephraim and Manasseh, they are now children. They become part of the 12. So actually the 12 is now kind of 13, because Joseph isn't there anymore now, it's Ephraim and Manasseh. But as we're later on going to see, ultimately Levi didn't get any land, so it's 12 again. So the others, they kind of stays Joseph's sons, but these are now Jacob's sons, like adopting his grandchildren, upgrading their status. Verse 7, as for me, when I came from Paran to my sorrow, Rachel died in the land of Canaan on the way, when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath. And I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. So this is kind of an interesting moment. Here is reminding Joseph of the death of his mother. Why is this? Is this like the rambling of an old man near death who is like, okay, here I am, I'm making these two boys my sons. And when I was near on the way to Ephrath, Rachel died. It's like, what does these two things have in common? It seems like a rambling of a senile man, right, near death, kind of Biden kind of saying. Does it have anything in common? And ultimately it actually does have a lot in common, right? Because that is actually in a way the explanation for why he is making them his two sons instead of his grandsons, because of the early death of his wife, his beloved wife. So she only had two sons, Joseph and Benjamin. She died early, unlike Leah and the slave girls. So by adopting them, he is making them as if they are still sons of his and Rachel's. Okay, so that is the legal explanation Jacob is giving, or Israel in this case, to justify ultimately his adopting of Ephraim and Manasseh. Otherwise, again, the people would have said, but the law states, no, we are the children, they are not. How could he make them children? And they're just grandchildren. What about our children, the other grandchildren? Why didn't they get? That's not fair. So Joseph, by stating, on the way she died, and therefore ultimately, okay, he's not saying the therefore, but this is now the connection. This is why ultimately he connected and adopted them as his own. Because of the early death of Rachel. So to enhance kind of her offspring. Okay, so I mean Leah had 6 children, so Rachel 2. And Joseph will out because the other 2 will kind of come in his place. Still half of what Leah had, ultimately 3.